When I was a sophomore in high school, one of my teachers took me aside somewhat secretively and told me I was the top student in my class and I should keep up the good work. Quite typically, I didn't listen, and I moved on to a small alternative school where I thought I'd have a better chance and more freedom to become the person I thought I wanted to be. Not long after that, I scored 44 points in a high school basketball game. I starred in plays. During my senior year, I got to play the part of Christ in Godspell, and I spent 2 weeks touring the state performing in a play that I loved and allowed me to come out of my shell. I got into the one college I wanted to go to and applied to, and spent a year there, and then I left, and everything continued to kind of fall into my lap. I pitched a 1-0 shutout in a 16 to 18 year old league in an all-star game. I wrote stories that won contests. I wrote part of a book that won a Fiction Fellowship Award. I discovered an interest in counseling and worked in a peer counseling organization. And even though I was a shy, nerdy, weird kid who didn't have a lot of social experience, I found myself able to work with people in counseling at a very deep level. When that job had run its course, I decided I wanted to be a performer. And so I wrote stories about Vermont farm and rural life and performed them, just kind of let it be known that I was willing to perform. And the phone rang, and I had a career as a performer for 10 years. I was a featured performer at the National Storytelling Festival, and I performed for hundreds of small groups and organizations in Vermont and as an after-dinner speaker. Everything I did kind of fell into my lap and seemed to come at the right time, and I seemed to be able to accomplish it. When I was a carpenter for a few years, one of the other guys I worked with, who was more rough around the edges, didn't like me, called me a golden boy. And because even though I wasn't as good a carpenter as he was, I got along well with people, and so I became the foreman of the crew. Everything happened easily. And then it didn't. It's a long story, but one day I found myself sitting in front of a prosecutor trying to explain how I had borrowed millions of dollars from hundreds of people without a contract, without giving them the whole story of how many people were involved, how much money was involved, that there was a secret partner who I was giving money to and not telling anyone even of his existence. I had promised all of these people, every single one of them was someone that I cared about. I had promised all of these people that they would be paid back, because this was a project about the God within us, and it would be supported by the same power that the film was being created to express. And eventually the state of Vermont Financial Regulation Agency showed up at my door and said, "What are you doing? What are you raising all this money for?" And the whole thing came crashing down. I was exposed for all the untruths that I had told to people. I eventually had to divulge that I had come under the influence of a spiritual teacher and had gone off on the most insane cockamamie scheme truly believing that it would work out and that I would make it happen and that everyone would be repaid and that the film we were going to make would be beautiful and everyone would eventually understand. And it was so stupid and so foolish and so delusional and so criminal that of course it didn't work out. And I wound up going to federal prison for 4 years and having to face myself in ways that I had never imagined. Suddenly, everything that had gone right, nothing could go right. Nobody cared about what I said. Nobody cared about what I wrote. And my whole life kind of came crashing down around me. And the worst part of it, honestly, for me was that it wasn't just came crashing down around me, but it came crashing down around hundreds of people I cared about and that I had made what I considered to be sacred promises and commitments to. And when that happened and when I went to prison, when I was navigating the whole legal system, I pretty much disappeared. And hundreds of people that I had had very intimate conversations with about their deepest truth and about what this film was going to be about and what we were trying to do and what was going to be expressed in this project. I had talked with so many people at such a deep level, sincerely believing that they were becoming part of a sacred, a blessed project that would flower and support all of us in the process. And it turned out to be a complete crock. And the man whose promises I had trusted in order to raise this money and make this film turned out to be not at all the highly evolved, spiritually evolved, and man of great integrity that I had believed him to be. He was, I don't even know what he was, but he disappeared when the shit hit the fan and left me holding the bag. So all those conversations that I never had, or all those conversations that I did have, I went to prison. I couldn't talk to these people. And when I came out of prison, I was frankly exhausted and just so kind of beaten down and transformed by this experience that I knew there was no real way that I could have the conversations with people that these people deserved to have. So I came back to my community. I lived a pretty quiet life. I worked in a metal shop. I worked in a composting facility, washing garbage cans. I did whatever I had to do to make a simple living, to begin to pay restitution to the people who had been harmed and who had lost money by the foolishness of what I did. But I had no way to talk to people. If I met people in the store, I would come up to them and I would say hello and I would apologize. But what could I say? There was so much to be said, and any conversation about this could take 8 hours. And I simply didn't have the energy or the will to have those conversations, even though they weighed on me. And I knew that on some level people deserved it. To this day, some 20, I don't even know how many years later, I still have dreams at least once a week about the film, about finishing it, about finding ways to repay people. The weight of what happened still processes through me. But most of these people have never heard from me. And it's not because I don't want to, or not because I even don't think I should or they deserve it. I just haven't had the capacity. I made one channel, maybe 15 episodes a few years ago, trying to explain what happened, and then I left it there. And recently I've had more of a desire to begin to talk about my experiences in all this, what happened in the process, how I got lost, perhaps what you can learn when you get so terribly, unconscionably lost that you harm other people in the process. And so I decided I wanted to take another crack at making this channel. This is not going to be a linear conversation about what happened. It'll be bits and pieces here and there, things that I've experienced or learned or seen along the way. And like most things in life, I have to admit that I'm doing this for myself primarily. But I guess there's a secondary hope that maybe this could be of value to some of the people who trusted me and had that trust violated, or even to people who, like me, have made phenomenal mistakes or even simple mistakes and are trying to find their own way to some kind of a life that matters, or that you can live with, or that you can find your own integrity in. So we'll see where this goes from here. That's it for this first clip. Thank you for listening, and feel free to come back. I'll be here again. Thank you.